everybody, and welcome to Viking Superpowers. I haven't made a video for a couple of weeks, and I do apologise for that. Been very busy finishing off my book, Viking Superpowers, Way of Asgard. And I'll tell you about that in another video. But right now, today, I'd like to talk about a very long-awaited and exciting book called the Eden Enigma. This is the latest book by Paul Wallis, who's a friend of mine and who I've collaborated with a little bit. I had something to do with this book because from Paul's last book, The Eden Conspiracy, we started talking about the Old Norse connection with Armenia, Anatolia, Turkey, and together we've discovered some pretty fantastic things. So in my new book coming up, I talk a lot about that. But today I'd like to talk about the conversation Paul and I had about all that in this book. I'll just skip forward. Now, as you would probably know, Paul's books are available on Amazon. They're only available as soft covers at the moment. Some very unscrupulous people were taking his ebooks and distributing them all over the world, and Paul was getting nothing from them, and that's a terrible thing. So I don't think it slowed him down at all. And to tell the truth, I'm very old-fashioned. I love the smell and the feel and the look and the bookcase full of books. I love ebooks too. They're very useful when it comes to researching. Sometimes you can cut and paste out of them and put it into the search engine and find stuff. That's what I really like about them. So I just want to read from chapter 11. So I'll just show you the inscription Paul put in there for me when I went to visit him a couple of weeks ago. It says, "To my friend Dave, fellow pilgrim, happy exploring." And Paul and I had a lovely afternoon tea together and some cakes and discussed the book and discussed my book. I've been actually buying his book and sending it to a few friends of mine who've done me great favours, particularly this friend Ed William, who's got a great new book out. I'll be making a video about Ed's book, and hopefully I can get to speak to him and interview him sometime soon. He's an ex-British sailor and had just an amazing life, the incredible paranormal events that have happened to him. He's got a abduction, UFO experience in there. He's experienced USOs, unidentified submersible objects, which are basically UFOs or UAPs that can travel super fast under the water. I just want to read a bit of chapter 11 from Paul's books to you. This is the chapter that I feature a lot in. I think you'll find it interesting. I don't want to give too much away. You really do need to read the book, but Paul calls the chapter Crosses and Craft, and he says, "The sun cross was at every sacred site I visited in Iceland, in ancient art, in tombs, in gathering places and places of worship." This is actually me speaking. "It's beer o'clock." This is Paul speaking now. "It's beer o'clock, and I am back in van at the Doubletree Hilton, enjoying an online conversation with David Lovegrove. He has just returned from a research trip to his ancestral home of Iceland and is overflowing with scholarly excitement as we chew over the implications of what he saw there. David is the author of Viking Superpowers. That's my book that's just coming out now. It's just uploaded today, to tell the truth. The full title is Viking Superpowers, Way of Asgard. A gentleman and a scholar, he looks entirely the part as a Viking by descent." I'll take that compliment. Everyone wants to look like a Viking these days. "He also happens to be the person who first switched me on to Snorri Sturluson and the ancient Norse stories of the Aesir from Älvsland, the neighbours and rivals of the Vanir from Van." And this is the incredible stuff Paul's been teaching me about the people at Lake Van, who we both believe are the Vanir of the Norse legends, mysterious people who are rivals with the Aesir. He goes on, "The sun crosses across Scandinavia date to the Bronze Age, and a recurring theme in megalithic remains, rock art, and other objects found from that period and mirroring later in Iceland. The sun crosses across Scandinavia date to the Bronze Age. Now this is me again in italics. There is no doubt in my mind there is a profound link between the so-called gods of the Vikings, the Aesir of the north, and the ancient lands of ancient Armenia. And Paul says, of this I am already fully persuaded. So I asked David about the prevalence of the four-armed sun cross in the north. I want to know if it means in Iceland what it does at Ayanus. How does he interpret the symbol? Now, Ayanus is where Paul's done a lot of research personally with Matt Lacroix, and they're producing some fantastic stuff, including a movie documentary coming out very soon. And as I said, read the book, find out what it's all about, and actually read all of Paul's books, because they really do build a case from start right through. He's really helped set up the mental architecture that helped me to write my book. It was Paul that just turned me on to this idea that retranslating ancient stories can lead to surprising discoveries, and that's what I've been doing, what he's been doing in the Bible and other ancient texts. I've been doing in the Norse sagas and what's called the Eddas, the mythological poems and stories about the gods and elves and giants and dragons and all that cool stuff. As I've retranslated those, I've been discovering things that are hidden in English words that are not totally honest, such as the word heaven. That's the same stuff goes on in the Bible. So this is my answer to Paul's question. Most archaeologists see this fascination with the sun disk as indicating primitives worshipping the sun. But I'm coming to believe that these images are visual recollections of the Aesir coming to the north. I interpret it as paleo contact. I think, to the best of their ability, they were recording exactly what they were seeing and experiencing. So yes, I think the ancient people were seeing suns, but some of them were artificial suns. I think that is what caught their attention. These artificial sun disks are reference to things in the sky which visited and interacted with them. Let me show you some objects which I think will support that view. Before we get to the objects though, I want to know what the academic mainstream makes of David's paleocontact reading of the Icelandic and Scandinavian narratives and carvings. This was my answer. Paul, I'm sure many would think my theories and my retranslations of the ancient Norse stories to be a bit balmy or downright crackpot. But I have a very special and valued ally, someone I have enjoyed a correspondence with over the years. His name is Professor Jacobson, and he is that wonderful thing, a very open-minded professional academic and tenured professor. Paul notes, Professor Ármann Jakobsson is the head of Old Icelandic Studies at the University of Iceland, which is called Háskóli Íslands, and is globally recognised as one of the world's leading authorities on the Old Norse sagas and Eddas. He has affirmed David's work of interpreting the Old Norse texts in the strongest of terms, and there's clearly a warm synergy between the two scholars. There is no doubt in my mind that David is on the cutting edge of new thought in the hermeneutics of Old Norse literature and symbology, and I am thrilled to hear that same view affirmed by Professor Jacobson. This is me. I had the best conversation with Professor Jakobsson over breakfast one morning while I was there. David's enthusiasm is infectious. I hope I can infect you with my enthusiasm. The food was superb and very Icelandic/Danish, and as we ate, we dug deep into the hermeneutics of Old Norse and the mainstream academic consensus. He was very warm and encouraging in urging me to keep going in this previously taboo direction. Paul says, I am thrilled to see my friend's scholarship in the interpretation of Snorri Sturluson becoming world-renowned, but I will allow David to go more deeply into the details of his conversations with Professor Jacobson in his superb book, Viking Superpowers. Paul and I then talk about a number of things that's in my book, and I will leave it at that. The whole book is just fantastic, riveting, as always with Paul's work. It's very warm and human and personal, and you feel like you're there with him, and that's one of the reasons I believe him so strongly when he says things, when he talks about the things that he talks about in this book and his other books. I just feel like I'm talking to an honourable, honest guy. The Eden Enigma, Paul Wallis, a fantastic writer, somebody to follow, and a hard worker, and undoubtedly the next great books in the works. And Paul's being interviewed by very serious people all over the world. On the front of the book it says, "The brilliant Paul Wallis offers a fascinating answer. Avi Loeb." He's the American scientist who discovered that thing called Umamu, thing that just has to be some kind of giant alien spaceship orbiting the sun. And I think it had arrived from somewhere else, but it just didn't have a trajectory that was normal. So, as you know, people are really revealing what's been going on the Earth for a long time at the top level now, and many, brilliant. It's usually the smartest people that are into this. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks for listening. I'll put links to Paul's book below, and also a link to Professor Jakobsson's book, The Troll Inside You. Happy reading, and look forward to my next video. I'm just going to talk a bit about my new book that's just launching. Okay, see you later.